Start again. Welcome in to another Running with the Wolves podcast on the Believe Sports Network. My name is Gabe Anderson, and I'm joined, as always, by Chris Emerson. Chris, how we doing?
Hey, playoff basketball, man. Who's doing better than the Minnesota Timberwolves fans right now?
That's true. And, I mean, the success has got me flustered today. I've never screwed up the intro before, and I don't know, success, I guess, does that to you. But before we get going, make sure to like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. And if you're listening later on Spotify or Apple or whatever platform you're listening on, make sure to give us a 5-star rating and a review. We're trying to take this thing to the moon. Help us get us there. So, Minnesota Timberwolves, they are in the second round of the playoffs after beating the Phoenix Suns, which you already know, unless you are living under a rock. They are taking on the Denver Nuggets. So let's just get your initial thoughts on this series, what you're kind of looking for, and then I'll go in with some stats.
I mean, it's going to be fun to see. It's going to be fun to see. I think the styles are great for us where, kind of with Phoenix, everybody was like, oh, that's going to be a hard matchup, where everybody knows Denver's a good matchup for us. So that's great. They're not fast. So it lets us set up our defense. They've got bigs, in Jokic, that's kind of their center of attention. We've got bigs that are the center of our defense. So like it matches up fun. It's just one of those series that you have to hold down guys like, KCP and Michael Porter Jr., guys like that. Those are the guys you can't let get off. Or like Braun, guys that are like the extras. And the same for us. We got to have guys like Alexander Walker and Nas and McDaniels step up.
Yeah, absolutely. Some interesting stats from just the games this season. Games that the Timberwolves have won, both games, they were a plus 19 in the first half. So I think it's going to be important for us to get out to good starts, because Denver is a team that likes to kind of play with their food. They like to kind of let a team hang around, and then take control in the fourth quarter. That's what we got to avoid. If we can be up 10, maybe 12 points going into the fourth, I like our chances going forward.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'd rather be up than down every time. And like you said, if they're a big fourth quarter team, but we're a third quarter team.
Right. That's
it's going to be a dogfight. It's just going to be a dogfight, and I'm here for it.
And another thing, Jamal Murray hasn't really killed us so far this year. I know he did very well in the Lakers series, particularly late in the games, but he only scored 20 points in 3 games. He only scored 20 points once against us. So we did a pretty good job, and I think we have the length and the defense in Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jaden McDaniels to kind of contain Jamal Murray, and then Jokic is going to do what he does. And I think you're right. I think a lot of it is going to come down to the other role players and keeping them down, because Michael Porter Jr.'s had some good game against us. He's had some bad games against us. Like, for example, the first time we beat Denver, the first game against them, it was like the 5th game of the year. Michael Porter Jr. was held to 5 points on 2 of 11 shooting. But later on in the season, he killed us another game. Yeah, he is hot and cold. Yep, go ahead.
And the second half of the season, he's been on fire. Like, he's been an NBA All-Star since the All-Star break. He'll shoot over anybody. Like, I watched him in an interview. I like the kid. But I heard him in an interview. He's like, he's so tall and he jumps so high on his jump shot and releases so high. He doesn't care if he's defended or not. Like, so it doesn't matter. It's just like you're rolling the dice, because he's let's say a 45% shooter. So 60% of the time, he's going to miss it. So you're just hoping that happens, because your defense almost doesn't matter.
Yeah, and another stat I found interesting from our matchups this year, in our 2 wins, the Wolves we're averaging somewhere in the range of like 27 made free throws. In our 2 losses, that goes down to an average of 14 made free throws per game. So we need to get to the line. We need to attack their interior defense and get a lot of their starters and role players in foul trouble. If we can get them in foul trouble, I don't know if they have enough off the bench to hang with what we have coming off the bench.
And they're not the type of team that gets to the line a lot, if I
No,
remember right. So,
no.
I mean, that can, I mean, I think I just saw in the Lakers game, which of course is the Lakers, so it's different, but there it was like 30-6 or 30-8 free throws shot. So, and Denver had 8. So, like, if you can keep them off the free throw line and we can get to the line, I mean, that's always huge. I think it's going to be big. You know what Nas has to step up, like we
Yep.
talked about it earlier in the season that if we're going to make a run, Anthony Edwards is going to have to play like an MVP. Like we said this, Anthony Edwards has to play like MVP. Gobert has to play like the defensive player of the year. Karl Anthony Town has to contribute at an all-star level. And Nas has to be like a sixth man of the year. Like you need almost all of those to hit to make a big run. And we're not far off of all of those, but
Right.
series 1, Nas wasn't there. So we're going to need somebody that gives us more punch. It's hard to rely on, Connolly and Nikhil Alexander Walker all the time.
That's true. Although I do think that Mike Conley is pretty hungry for this one. He's got to know
Yeah.
that his clock is expiring and he's running out of time to win a championship. And I know I heard some interviews with him. He's basically telling the team, hey, do this for me, play at my level. And we've seen an aggressive Mike Conley in these playoffs. We've seen a pretty consistent Mike Conley in these playoffs. And he's had some good games against the Nuggets this year. For example, in one game, he went 5 for 6 from 3. This was the 111-98 game. I believe this is the game that we actually did the watch party for at the Park Tavern. But yeah, Mike Conley, I was kind of watching the game. I was kind of more interacting with people, but Mike Conley, huge in that game, 5 for 6 from 3, scoring 23 points. If we get that kind of Mike Conley, I mean, geez, we are tough to beat.
Yeah, I mean, anything. That's the thing. Like, we just need one of the extra guys to give us. I mean, if they give us 17, I mean, that's huge. I was watching one of the last games when Connolly, I think when he went for 20 or something like that. And I'm like, you can't, and it was a close game. I'm like, you cannot lose a game that Mike Conley scores you 20 in the playoffs. Like, if an extra guy gives you that sort of impact, you have to win those games.
Yep, for sure. And so let's talk about the Joker, Nikola Jokic. I honestly think, in my humble opinion, he is the best player in the league right now. Would you agree with me or no?
Yeah, I mean, he's been the best guy for the last 5 years. I mean, he should have been the MVP for the last 5 years in a row.
Yeah. And it's going to be hard to contain him, although I don't think we need to contain him because a lot of the times the way to beat the Nuggets is to turn him into a scoring first option because he's going to score. He's going to get his. But if you can have him shoot something like, let's say, 11 for 24 or 10 for 25 or something like that, then I like our chances a lot, particularly if we can contain a guy like Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. as well, because it's not like Jokic is going to go have a game. Sometimes Anthony Edwards has games where he scores like 8 points and just becomes a passing machine. Joker is going to get his points and his assists and his rebounds, but if you can limit him as much as you can, that's got to be the road to success.
Yeah, it seems to be so far. Like, that's why we've had so much success playing smaller guys on him. You just kind of get up underneath him and just kind of get in his way so he can't get moving. Slow-mo has been successful with that. Nas has been successful, even Luka Garza. And the way that Finch likes to do it is we man him up. We don't bring a double. And because when you bring a double, that's when it gets their ball rotation to open 3-point shooters. And that's how the extra guys like Braun and Michael Porter Jr. and all those guys in KCP get off on free open jumpers. We can't have that. So if Finch doesn't switch it up and he goes the way that he's been kind of even showing the league how to defend Joker, we'll man him up, and then it's just harder for those other guys to get open because everyone's staying home.
So I would imagine, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, you would start out with, now obviously guys are going to come off the bench. I would put Rudy
Cat.
on, you'd put Cat on him?
Yep. I'd put Cat on him and just say, body him up. Don't reach for anything. All you're doing is just moving your feet and just staying in his way. And then Rudy's going to float off of Aaron Gordon because Aaron Gordon is what he is. He's just a dunker spot guy, really, even though he
Yep.
has more made 3-pointers than Larry Bird in his career. Fun fact.
Wow.
Yeah, but you kind of fade off of him a little bit and protect the rim. But it's gonna be interesting to see how Cat does that. He's got to take Ant's advice and stop fouling.
Yeah, I would agree because we're going to need Cat. We needed Cat in that last series, and he really produced well. For some reason, he plays really well in game fours in his career, and he continued that trend in game 4 against the Suns. And Cat, he just doesn't need to do too much on offense. Hit the open 3, maybe attack every so often, and get low position on players.
That's what we've been saying. Make it easy. And he's had big games against Denver. I know he takes games against Jokic a little bit personal, which is cool. But he also has a big mismatch because a lot of times on defense they've got a much smaller player on him. So he's going to have to be effective. Him and Gobert are going to have to make Denver pay for playing fairly small because a lot of times they're going to have Aaron Gordon on Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, and I think another big guy in this series, well, obviously kind of, is going to be Jaden McDaniels. Put him on Jamal Murray. He did not shy away from the moment when he was guarding guys like Kevin Durant or Bradley Beal or Devin Booker. He is not afraid to guard other guys and the big guys on the other team. And I hope this continues. I hope that they continues to let a few things go. Let the guys play rough. Let the guys play physical basketball, which is usually what we see in the NBA. And like we said last series, advantage us in those situations because who likes to, when you think of aggressive perimeter, long arm defender, who do we got? Jaden McDaniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And Jaden is going to also need to do it on the offensive end as well, which we saw him do a couple times in the series against the Suns too.
Yeah, you can't just what I liked about the Suns series more than anything is Jaden didn't let the other team's player that's defending him just stand. And that's what happens a lot of times is they'll have Durant or somebody that they don't want to get put in a lot of action on defense, guard McDaniels, and McDaniels just stands in the corner, and then that guy just rests.
Yep.
You got to make your guy work too. So the way that he was crashing the offensive glass, the way that he was just getting scrappy in there was huge. He has to, if he's not going to be scoring points, he just has to be moving and being disruptive. I know that takes away from his defense, but if that means you only can, we have to sub you out more, that's fine. Because Nickeil Alexander-Walker's ready to, get right back in there. We're trying to win games,
Right, for sure. And so it sounds like Chris Finch is going to, I never thought we'd have to talk about this in this situation. It sounds like Chris Finch is going to be at game 1 against Denver. They don't know in what capacity, but how do you think if the Wolves for some reason don't have full access to Chris Finch, do you think that matters much in game, or is most of the preparation being put into beating the Nuggets right now? Or do you think that Mike Nori is a capable understudy of Chris Finch for this playoff run?
Well, there's a lot there. I know somebody who had a similar injury, and he wants the world to know that it's not an easy turnaround. Like he's going to be amazed if Finch is even, in any really capacity coaching anywhere near the sideline because of the type of pain and recovery that this injury has. So it's going to be crazy to see what they do. but Finch is a tough guy. We'll see. I think Micah Nori is fully capable, even to take over as head coach. To be honest with you, I think that they run a system, and their system is move the ball. If a guy's open, like how everyone was so mad about people not calling plays in the middle of the season, and
Mm-hmm.
well, I kept saying, well, that's not what we do, because if you call plays, teams can figure out what you're doing. It's easier to defend. If you just flow, if the offense flows naturally, it's hard to defend, and that's what we're doing. So I don't think there needs to be that much help that way. I think some of the strategy stuff. Maybe it would help to have Finch there. I think Mike Nori can do it. But I think he's going to be involved somehow. Most of the work is done,
Oh
like
yeah.
you said, this
Yep.
week. Most of the main strategies are done this week. But even the in-game stuff, if Finch couldn't be involved, I'm fully fine with what we have.
Yeah, maybe Mike Nori, maybe he can just like be back. Maybe he can be in the locker room just on like an iPad or something and just talking to Nori through like an earpiece or something like that.
They've talked about that. They've talked about in the suite. They talked about maybe row 2 where he could have his legs straightened out, like, and
Oh,
just
sure.
watching from row 2. Like, I don't think it's that hard to figure out how to make it work. But I don't even know. I mean, I think Micah Nori's known enough and trusted enough and been with the team enough that like he's even ready for this step up if he needs to.
I think so. And not only just looking at the longevity of Mike and Nori's career, what a opportunity for him if he can step
Huge.
in for Coach Finch and I'm sure at some point being the main assistant coach of the Timberwolves, I'm sure his name will come up for head coaching jobs if he
I
can
bet
say,
this offseason.
yeah, for sure. And if he can come in and beat the Nuggets and say, hey, Coach Finch went down on short notice. I came in and did blank, blank, and blank.
Yeah.
What an opportunity for him to build his resume up. And I mean, I want to see the whole Wolves staff move up. I mean, for example,
For sure.
I coach the boys volleyball at the high school, and they are basically, I'm coaching the B team, so they're the lowest team. And I always tell them like, when they tell me like, hey, I want to play JV, I want to play varsity, I want to move up, I tell them, good, that's exactly what you should want. You should always want to
Yeah.
move up. Like, I'm not offended by you saying, hey, I want to go play JV. Like, that's what you should want. And yeah, this could be a huge opportunity for Mike and Nori.
It could be. But yeah, I think they're going to work it out. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. I think, I think it's going to work out fine, and maybe they'll use it for some sort of motivation, which is even cooler.
Yeah, because I really do think the connection between Cat, Ant, some of these players, and Finch, I do. Now, obviously, there's limits to it where it's not a family relationship, but I do think the relationship between Ant and Cat and Finch, I do think it's real, and I do think they really like playing for this guy in a capacity where we haven't seen this really in Wolves history. Let me ask you this question that they brought up on the broadcast. They didn't really bring it up as a question. I was watching the Bally Sports broadcast, which too bad they're not doing the Denver and On series. There's some Bally Sports stuff going on. If you haven't heard, Comcast isn't carrying Bally Sports anymore, so it's a whole thing. But Jim Peterson said that Chris Finch is the best coach in Wolves history. Has he taken that mantle for you yet? Or is it still Flip Saunders or someone else? I know you're not going to say Tom Thibodeau, but.
No, I mean, he took that mantle from me the first time that he got us to the playoffs when we had that scrambling defense. Yeah, I mean, there's Flip Saunders was fairly effective, and he had great players in Kevin Garnett, and they won games. But I mean, he wasn't the type of coach. I wouldn't say that he was an amazing coach, really. He was fine, like he historically is famous for saying, don't shoot 3-pointers. We want to really focus on the mid range. I mean, that's been proven to be absolutely ludicrous. So like,
different,
I mean,
although different times though, different times still.
Different times, but if your exact principles are exactly wrong,
Yeah.
it's not a great look.
Right.
Um, and I think we're so lucky to have him. And I mean, the relationship that he has with these guys, like you're saying, is just so much on top of that. And I think other stars and other players respect him too. Like I see him talking mess on the sidelines to players when they come by. I think there's a big mutual respect. Coaching the All-Star game was huge.
Yep.
That stuff's important when you're getting like veteran minimum type guys to fill off a second championship roster.
And speaking of veteran minimum top guys, I was watching the Cleveland series, and Marcus Morris Sr. was getting some run in clutch time. So
I
interesting.
like him.
Now, yeah, I do too. I do too. Now, obviously, they've got a few injuries. I think Dean Wade's out. I think Jarrett Allen was out as well. But interesting
Yeah.
there. I remember we were talking about the potential of him coming here, but I don't know if we really need him right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have him on the bench. I mean, I'd always have a gun. You never know when you need it.
Yeah.
But I'll keep rolling with what we have. We're kind of shrinking our bench a little bit. Slow-mo was kind of out of he was hurt, but kind of out of the rotation mostly last week. And same with J-Mac McLaughlin. So it'll be interesting to see how those guys play in this role. Maybe there'll be a time when that sort of spark is going to be important, or McDaniel's defense on on Jokic. But hopefully Nas gets going hot, and he's, there was times when he was the leader of our offense, even with Anthony Edwards out there for a stretch of weeks there. So we got to get that going. It's going to be fun to see if we can.
And that's what I'm so excited about. Like you were talking about, the Wolves, like they have so many different lanes where they can be successful. Obviously,
Yeah.
it starts with defense, but we haven't even seen the full potential of Nas Reed yet in the playoffs. He could go off at any time. That's the thing. Nas can go off at any time. Ant can go off at any time. Karl Anthony Towns can get hot at any time. We can get some lobs up to Rudy at any time. I'm not saying force it to him. If the Wolves are listening, I'm not yelling force it to Rudy Gobert and
but if
make
it's there,
him do a
take the
post
easy
move.
one.
Yes. Basically, Rudy Gobert has had like 5 good post moves the entire year. And
I mean, it's just not, there's no point to it. Like
no.
dunk it or move the ball. And most of the time he's been good. Sometimes when he gets a small on him, he gets a little excited. I get that. And sometimes it works, which is almost a detriment because you want it not to work so he doesn't get influenced to do it again. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, I can't be too mad. We swept, and sometimes those big guys that do all the dirty work need to have a little bit of ice cream too. So I get it, him trying to be fancy, but guys need to play their roles this series. It's crunch time.
And here's the other thing. One last thing I'll say about Rudy. Don't get me wrong. I love the guy. He should be Defensive Player of the Year. I love Rudy Gobert. But Point Rudy has kind of got to stop. I know everyone loves it, but when he gets a steal and is clamoring down the court, I would say half the time it's a turnover. And he got lucky one time in this series where it was a weird collision and he threw it off the backboard and it went in. Get the ball to a guard. I know everyone loves seeing the big 7'2" guy running up the court like he's Victor Wembanyama, but get the ball to a guard, Rudy. These points are important.
I'm old enough to remember Shaquille O'Neal starting out, and he was one of those guys who loved to try to do that, and it was a walking turnover every time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the best thing to do is if you get across half court, stand up, find a guard, live to play another game. But that's another point, talking about a thing that we can bring into an advantage with our length. Jokic loves to turn the ball over. So we need to treat, if we can make him be, a 1-to-1 assist to turnover ratio guy, that's huge. And we've had plenty of games where we've played him where he's been right around that, maybe 5 assists, 5 turnovers. Like that's the type of thing we need to see from him.
And final thought before we go into predictions, I just want to say, I really think Anthony, you know that commercial that's going around that says like, oh, playoff Steph isn't a thing, or playoff Giannis isn't a thing. I really think that playoff Ant is a thing because I've seen it sometimes during the season, but I really think he takes it to a new level in the playoffs. And as long as he's doing that, I think we can beat anybody. So let's get into it right now. Give me your prediction for the series.
So I'm going to be greedy because I want it to go 6 games because I just want to see 6 games of these two teams playing. I'm going to say Wolves in 6, which is an aggressive thing to say, but I feel like we can do it.
You know, the crazy thing, I was going to say the exact same thing, because how fun would that be to close out Game 6 in Minnesota in front of the fans? There'll probably be a whiteout or something, everyone wearing the same shirt, everyone going nuts. Like, there may be some cars flipped over if that happens, and it's only halfway to the finals. I agree with you. I'm going Wolves in 6 as well. And
Nice.
and let me reiterate, this is coming from a guy, Chris,
Yeah.
who was pretty sure Suns in 6 last time.
Suns in 6, yeah. I mean, we've showed that we can do things that I didn't think we could do. I didn't think Karl Anthony Towns, to be honest with you, could play within himself. I didn't think he could play within the system. I thought that he was going to try to put his stamp on the game. And when he does that, a lot of times we lose. I was worried about that. I'm not worried about that anymore. I think that he understands what's going on and what's at stake and what his legacy means if the Timberwolves move on.
Yeah, and let me share you one interesting fact that I put on the last podcast, but I don't think you were on yet.
Right.
The team that has knocked Kevin Durant out of the playoffs, that team, all except one of those teams, have made it to the NBA Finals. And
I mean,
7 out of 10 have won the NBA Finals. Now, a lot of times Kevin Durant made it to the finals and he would get knocked out in the finals. So obviously those teams won. But can you name the only team that lost to Kevin Durant in the playoffs that didn't make the NBA Finals? And I'll give you a hint. One of our current players is on that team. The who?
The Bucks.
No.
Oh no, they beat him and then won the championship.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want me to give you the year?
No.
Okay.
No, I won't even guess it. Who is it?
The 2020 or the 2012-2013 Memphis Grizzlies, led by Mike Conley, Zach Randolph, Marc Gasol, Tony Allen. And so that was the only team to knock Kevin Durant out of the playoffs that didn't at least go to the NBA Finals.
Well,
so
let's
little fun fact for you. Yeah, absolutely.
Let's get avenge Mike Conley for having that mar on his Hall of Fame career.
And that's the crazy thing, is that was the best that team ever did. So
yeah.
Sure. That was a fun team to watch. Anyway, a fun team to watch is the Minnesota Timberwolves, and we'll be following them all through the playoffs, trying to put out as many podcasts and videos as we can. So make sure to follow along. Chris, thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, no problem.
And this is the Running with the Timberwolves podcast on the Believe Sports Network. Like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, and give us a 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple. And as always, go Wolves, Wolves in 6.